Hey guys, welcome back to the Laid Back Homestead. I'm Crystal, and today we have some harvesting to do, different peppers, different tomatoes that are still producing, and I am going to be fermenting and saving tomato seeds. So let's grab our basket and get started. Well, I got my basket, and as you can tell, she's breaking down on me. Need to get a new one of these. So it is super hot in zone 9A. So I do have my hose going, filling my beds, watering them. So if you hear that in the background, that's why. As you can see, we've had casualties since we went on vacation. I believe these were Cherokee purples. And they normally do pretty good in my climate, but this bed has been tricky this year. I don't know what's going on with it. Potatoes are looking good. But this weekend, since I'm short on time today, it's a weekday and I've got a lot going on. This weekend though, we're going to come out, start taking out things that didn't make it, fertilize the things that did make it and are still producing. As you can see, it's hard to really get perspective on this. I mean, this is probably 7 foot tall, maybe even taller. So we have things that are still doing the Lord's work, but we have other things that need to come out, and I'm going to start planting out different things. But that's for this weekend. Today, we're going to harvest what we have blushing, just to get everything in and processed. So let's get started. So here we really just have different aromas. I'm taking them as soon as they start to blush. We have a lot of pest pressure right now, and that's only going to increase into the rest of June and July and August and September. Did I mention it's hot here in zone 9A, southeast Louisiana? I think the real feel is 92 degrees today. It's only early June, and we've got some, I believe these are great Thai chilies. Take the ones that are fully red. My chilies don't suffer a lot of pest pressure, so them I'm not so worried about. I can let them get red. I just don't want them to rot. And it's at this point I realize my microphone shut off for the second day in a row while recording. So what I am harvesting is mainly Roma tomatoes as well as red sausage variety and a few cream sausage thrown in. Now I've moved on to another bed and I am harvesting Brad's Atomic Grape. That is one variety I will be regrowing for a fall crop. I also think I'm going to regrow the cream sausage, as well as the garden paste variety, which I have here. Which, as you can see, the size of them is not as big as they were in the beginning of the season. I'm thinking the heat has something to do with that. Now this I thought was really cool. So what I'm showing you is my Scarlet Runner beans that are in a bed that's not where I started them. I started them in this bed over here, which has its own trellis for them to grow on, but instead they're growing up my tomato plants and have now climbed into another bed altogether. And I don't know why that tickles me, but it really does. Now I'm just grabbing some blueberries before the stink bugs get them all. And yes, that is my wilty tomato plant. I am planning on pulling that this weekend as part of a garden maintenance update. And now I've moved on to my hydroponic and my grow bags, and I'm just harvesting some MG Leopold peppers, as well as some more Romas, and a dwarf variety, I believe called Golden Gypsy. I also grabbed the rest of my Amish paste, and that plant is officially dead, so that will be coming out this weekend as well. Hey guys, so I want to talk to y'all a little bit about how I preserve my tomato seeds. I got a decent sized harvest. So as you can see, not a bad harvest for today. Production is starting to slow down. We are heading towards the end of our tomato season. So I normally at this point, I start saving seeds from my heirloom varieties that have performed really well. You can save seeds from hybrid varieties, but you're not guaranteed to get a true offspring or a true replica of what you grew prior. I've done it before just for fun. Sometimes you get something great, sometimes you get something else. But I prefer to ferment my tomato seeds, and I'm going to show y'all how we do that step by step, because I have some that are already finished and ready to be bagged. I have some that are fermented and ready to be moved to the paper towel to dry, and then I have some that I'm going to harvest out. It's really not hard. I have heard some people just scrape the pulp of the tomato out and lay it on a paper towel and dry their seeds that way. I can't attest to if that works or not, or what the germination rate is on something like that. I've always just fermented my tomato seeds, and I've always had really good germination rates when doing that, even for years after I've harvested them. So let's get started. So what I have here is a plate with my black brandy wine seeds. This was from my 1 pound black brandy wine that I've already fermented and dried. So the first step is actually for me to pick the seeds off of the paper towel so that I can make room for the seeds that are already fermented in the cup to be moved over to dry. And since I've already started this process, I'm essentially working backwards through the steps. Obviously, picking up your seeds is the last step. So now I have my bag labeled 1 pound black brandy wine with the year 2025 on it, and I can move on to dumping my fermented seeds. I'm showing you that I wrote Kentucky pink because that's what's actually in the cup right there, fermented. I scratched out black brandy wine. I like to reuse things. I don't like to waste, so this is just my way of running through the process. So you can see in the cup I have some Kentucky pink seeds. This was a tomato that was very large and green when I left on vacation, and by the time I got back it had split, and so I really wanted to save the seeds of this. So all you really need to do after they've been fermenting for about 3 days in a cup of water, you're going to pour them out into this mesh strainer and just scrape any residual pulp off. I normally do this under the kitchen sink, but for demonstration purposes, I am doing this outside, so I'll be using the hose. And all the fermentation process really does is allow the gel coating that encapsulates the seeds to break down in water. And it basically just results in a really clean seed that you can store without any residue from the tomato. So now I'm just gonna pour it through the mesh strainer. And I was actually a little surprised because there looked like there was some pulp that was left in the cup, but when I poured it out, it all fell right through. And I am doing this on my patio just to keep things clean. And as you can see, the seeds are actually pretty clean. There isn't much that I need to really rinse off or push through the mesh strainer. So after giving my patio a quick little rinse, just to get rid of any residue, I go ahead and rinse the seeds, and we are left with nice, clean seeds, ready to be dried and stored long term. If there would be any pulp left, I just use my finger, and here I'm just demonstrating because there really wasn't any pulp, but you just use your finger and kind of push that pulp through. As I mentioned, I normally do this over the kitchen sink in running water, not in my backyard, but for demonstration purposes, we're out here. So now that our seeds are nice and clean, I'm just going to flip them over onto the dried paper towel on top of the paper plate to absorb any extra moisture. I just find it helps them dry faster. And these I will be drying inside the house. I live in a fairly windy place, and I would not trust trying to dry my seeds outside. Plus I've got a lot of bird pressure. I don't know if they would come pick off the tomato seeds, but I'm not going to risk it. I have a special place in my house where I just go and I set them until they're dry, and it really only takes a couple of days. Now, because the seeds are wet, they do have a tendency to want to stick together. So I just take my finger and try and separate them as much as possible. It's not a big deal. You can separate them once they're dried. It just makes picking them up later a little bit easier, and it helps them dry a little bit faster. So now we're gonna prepare to harvest the seeds from the black from Tula, I reuse my cup, same cup that I have been fermenting in. If you come across any mold or mildew on your seeds, it's perfectly normal. It's no issue. I just put some bleach in the cup after I had been gone for a week to clean out from my last batch, and everything worked out fine. Also, if your seeds do mold during the fermentation process, that's perfectly normal and perfectly okay. I know some people can be a little squeamish about it, but when you dump them into the mesh strainer and you clean them, it won't affect the seeds at all. So now I've filled up my glass with water. Any amount will do. It doesn't have to be a certain amount of water, just enough for the seeds to be able to sit in and be fully covered so that they can ferment. So now I'm just getting my supplies together. I keep a plastic toddler spoon outside. I've had it now for quite some time, probably about 15 years, and my black from Tula tomato. And then I also have a knife I keep outside for gardening tasks. So all you're really gonna do is slice your tomato up the same way you would if you were eating it. And that's normally how I do save seeds. I will just slice into something we are making a sandwich with, and I scoop the seeds out and we'll ferment them right then and there in my kitchen. I'm doing this outside because this tomato was past its prime and was no longer going to be edible. And I'm just showing you the cavities where the seeds are. This particular black from Tula does have a good bit of seeds. And all I'm going to do is just take the spoon and start digging them out. Now I try to get as little pulp as possible, but at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. It may mean they need to ferment one extra day. Again, it's not that big of a deal. You just really want to get those seeds in the water. Now, my understanding is that saving seeds is a good practice because I believe it's after 3 generations of growing in your yard that variety becomes accustomed to your microclimate. At least that's what I've read in the past. So I'm giving it a try. Ultimately, though, I am saving seeds from my biggest and best producers because one day in the future, my hopes and dreams, I would love to have a little seed store where I could sell some of my favorite top seeds or my top performers. But that's in the future. For now, I have to finish working on the homestead and getting that up and running. So when I'm done, I went ahead and threw the rest of the tomato in my compost tumbler and a quick rinse of the table, and you're all done. Couldn't be any easier. And now we have our seeds. You can see the water is really clear. As the gel breaks down, the water will get cloudy. I just come outside every day, give them a little swirl. I may top them up with some fresh hose water. Just kind of swirl them around, help that gel break down. And in a couple of days, they'll be ready to be dried.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm hoping that I was able to dispel any of the myths or fears that may be around fermenting your own seeds. I am a little disappointed right now because I just realized my mic did not film or record audio for more than half of the footage I took today. So most of this video will be voice-overed, and not that that's terrible, but it is just really disappointing when you keep having failures with technology and you can't explain why you're having them. So, all that to say, I appreciate you hanging out with me today. If you like this type of content, I encourage you to subscribe. We are in the process of building a homestead from the ground up on 3 acres of land. And I will be taking y'all along on that journey and documenting that every step of the way and expanding our entire operation. So if that's something you're into, you want to see more of it, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here. And until next time, stay blessed.